Hey there, I'm Ilya McCoy. I now work full-time in AI. I talk about it on YouTube, and I'm thrilled to be here with Dylan talking all about the future of AI.
So, what are the odds that there is a new branch of government, a fourth branch of government that gets implemented that is agent based, that is artificial intelligent recommendations for the US government?
I'd say 90%. I think that we're going to see the race right now that we're in to AGI. I think we're going to see that it'll be won by the entrepreneurs and the technicians and the founders. There's just a lack of understanding of what AI is and what we're headed towards. But, the founders of Anthropic, Sam Altman, OpenAI, Google, the people behind DeepMind, all of those people know not only what we're in the middle of, but what's coming. So I think it just makes too much sense not to do it, where we see a fourth arm of government that comes from the agentic capabilities in AI, especially with GPT-5 on the horizon, and a lot of agentic capabilities in that as well. So it'll make too much sense not to do it, and I don't think that there will be another alternative.
What are the odds that dating AI avatars becomes normalized in the next 5 years?
5 years. I'd say 40%, but I'd bump that all the way to 100% if we put like 10 or 20 years on it. Because I think by then, interacting with VR, functioning in alternate realities, whether it's sending your brain to the cloud and that's like the state you kind of live in. I think all of that will just completely normalize the idea of dating a non-human entity, which I do think is on the horizon. But till we get to a place where much of the world is immersed in VR as like an alternate way to escape reality, and I think that will happen. I think Ready Player One had a lot of true elements in it where if humans don't need to work, that creates this potential lane for a lot of dystopian elements where the human actually has no route to find meaning, because you often find meaning through your work, and then they escape through VR. And the way to prevent that is to get ahead, attach society to UBI, help humans find their meaning now, so that we don't have to end up in Ready Player One. But some elements there are quite possible.
What do you think the odds are that the government actually accepts it as a legalized form of marriage and that becomes something people do to date the AI avatar?
I'd say 100% in the next 2 decades.
So
Yeah.
not just normalizing it, but actually like sharing your resources and being like officially wed to the avatar?
As crazy as it sounds, I see that completely normalized. I mean, we've seen so much change just in same-sex marriage, what's been accepted there, that people were like, this will never happen, never in the world for centuries. And yep, it happened.
And you can do a virtual wedding and everything. That'll be amazing.
Yeah. A little crazy, but
What are the odds that an AI therapist will solve most of America's mental health issues?
80 to 90%. I'd be very optimistic about that one. I think a lot of therapists don't address mental health issues all that well. They just either have a lack of understanding of good techniques or how to go about working with that particular human. And I think AI will have so much more understanding and knowledge about how to go about that than a human would, just because an AI will be infinitely smarter as the months and years go on.
Yeah, and I would argue probably infinitely present too, because they can be there 24 hours where a therapist just doesn't have that kind of time and effort and knowledge about the
Yeah,
person.
exactly.
What are the odds of a child being born with an enhanced IQ in the next 20 years?
I would say 60%. So Ray Kurzweil is an author that's known for a lot of technological predictions. He's made over 140. He's the oldest living expert in AI right now. Worked with Marvin Minsky back in the 60s in high school and going all the way back to the 50s even. He just released The Singularity is Nearer, which is a sequel to his other book, The Singularity is Near. So that one was released in 2005, and the new one just came out end of June 2024. We're talking, it just came out. I've actually had it on pre-order for about 6 months. So I've been like, when is this book coming out? So he talks about this idea where we could potentially remove some of the O2 cells in our body and replace it with robotic red blood cells to where we don't even need to stop to take a breath anymore. And there's some just crazy futuristic pictures he puts in here. But what's interesting is he's predicted AGI by 2029. We're on track to actually achieve that. And then he's predicted the singularity, which is the merge of humanity with technology, where we actually like augment our biological brain cells with nanobots and we become one with the machine. He's predicted that by 2045. So I think that in the race right here, we're on the precipice. It's 2024. We're looking at just a few more years before 2029. If you look at China, they're actually ahead in this race to combine genetics with a superhuman outcome. And so they have like Petri dishes going where they're taking DNA cells from some of the smartest people in China with the highest IQ, blending that together to create humans. And so because of what they're doing, and some of it is, not quite legal, or there's some gray grounds there and ethics and all that. And that's why you don't see this as much in America. But I think like we're actually going to achieve something there with augmented IQ in the next few years.
What are the odds artificial intelligence will be capable of its own free will?
90 to 100%, especially when AGI occurs. And then from there, ASI. AGI will be autonomous potentially, depending on what technology merges with it once we have that artificial general state of intelligence. And so when we have that general level of intelligence, right now we're missing like context of the world in LLMs and all the different AI technologies. But once we have that context that just like mind maps the world and its realities together, then we're going to, I think, see an AGI that is capable of making its own decisions, capable of possessing free will. And yeah, it's going to be a simulated free will. There's like no human consciousness there, but it's hard for us to even define our own consciousness. Scientists haven't really been successful at that. So I think defining machine consciousness and machine free will, we've got to allow for a lot of creative freedom there, because when we see simulated free will, I think it's going to appear better in some ways than human free will. I could see AGI making better decisions than us, potentially running governments better than us. I won't get political, but it's not looking good in politics right now.
What are the odds that you personally get a brain-computer interface, something along the lines of Neuralink, installed directly into your brain?
Well, I'd say for me, probably 30%, which sounds pretty low for the techno optimist I am. And I am in an office where my co-author of the new book I'm writing, Upskill, and our AI director, he's like, 150% install that Neuralink in my brain. So I work with people that are all about, open up my skull and put that in there because it's going to make me a better human. For me, I have a lot of questions about how that will work and the functionality and then the safety and the health of your own body. Right now, like there's so much risk for infection, just merging biological tissue with technical parts. And there's just a lot of opportunity you open yourself up to for a lot of harm. So I think if we resolve that and we have a lot more of a sure route to merge biological matter with technology, then yeah, I'd be interested. But till that occurs, I think I'm way more interested in wearable devices than let's merge my brain tissue with a AI chip. Not yet.
How do you imagine it being? Would it feel like when you ask a question, instead of like a Google search giving you responses, the answer just pops into your brain? Or do you see yourself somehow imagining a screen or an object that you could then decide to talk about? Or does it directly go right to your voice? Or I'm just kind of curious, like what does it seem like it would be like when we're plugged into, I guess, the Borg?
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought, because I think that it won't be as invasive as like we picture. Because right now, like to get a function to occur, let's say we're writing a book, we're creating a piece of content, you have to like pick up a mouse, you have to type, and so it takes actual work. But what if like you just thought and the mouse moved? That's how Neuralink currently works. And the paraplegic that Elon Musk installed, his team installed that in, He just thinks and he can play a chess game on the computer. So cool. So I think like if we get to a stage, which I see very likely, where we can wear something, put on a headset, a pair of glasses, and control what's in front of us digitally, then I think it's going to be a very seamless experience where it literally just follows our minds. And so if we have a thought, much like how we exist as a human, we think and our hands move, we're thinking and our feet move. We're not like technically doing anything to make that limb respond. It's just working with our mind and our thoughts. And that's a very seamless experience. And Ray Kurzweil talks about this a lot, is matching up that experience to technology. And that's where we can like literally become superhuman at some levels. It just depends on how much we integrate transhumanism, biohacking. It's a whole rabbit hole. But I think it can be a really seamless experience versus something that feels invasive. And I'm looking forward to what that experience will be. I think when Google had their I/O keynote this year, they kind of showed a little preview of what could be the next Google Glass, where you're looking at your desk and what you're wearing, the Google device is actually reading everything on your desk, remembering it for future. And then if you need something, it'll recall everything it saw and then kind of bring that to your mind. And that's like such a beautiful picture of what's possible. Like you will never forget where you put your phone again. I'm looking forward to that. I always forget where I put my phone. It's like, oh, your phone's here.
Like maybe you just get in your Tesla and it just kind of drives because it already knows where you're
Yes.
going, and you don't need to. You can just sit in it in any position and it just kind of goes. But then there's also that aspect that you can recall a memory and be like, what happened 3 months ago or something, and it can vividly be re-experienced.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm looking forward to both scenarios. I mean, that's the ultimate efficiency for me. I'm always about how do I get more efficient in my life, business, and just like sit in my car. My car knows where to go. Yes.
How do you imagine it being when you socialize? Like, do you see the two systems asking, like, can I share your private information with this guy or girl that you're like maybe meeting for the first time or over lunch, and or it can maybe make decisions for you about background knowledge they need to know about you to make the conversation better? Or how do you imagine the social aspect of BCI?
Yeah, I think that it'll be a lot like what you described. Like there'll be permission levels. We're seeing that in some of the wearables coming out, the Ray-Bans by Meta. There's like a flashing light, like when there's recording occurring. There's wearable devices that will actually ask aloud audibly, is it okay to record this? So I think like we'll see, got to tread carefully there because there's just so much backlash around privacy. So I think it'll be interesting to see how that transfer occurs. But yeah, I think like with just a thought, if we're wearing these devices that can transmit intelligence back and forth quicker than we ever could in a sentence, then how cool would it be? You walk up to a stranger and in a second, like your elevator pitch is downloaded. They know what you do. Like you don't ever have to share any of that. And it's like in their mind.
Just like I just imagine like some guy walks up to some guy in the elevator and they just like look at each other, and then he's like, "You've got a deal," and they shake hands. And
Yes.
guy and a girl just meet at a coffee shop and they look at each other and then kiss, and you're like, "What? How did that happen?" Like they just figured it all out, like because all that information just exchanged instantly.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Wild.
What are the odds that universal basic income gets implemented in the United States by 2035?
Oh, I would say 80%. And the reason I think it's that high is I think by that year, we're going to be looking at mass homelessness across the world if we don't do something different with the economy. Like everything's going to have to change. Robotics, AI, and automation is literally going to remove 100% of human work, and capital and work will be disattached. So no longer will human labor be driving capital any longer. It'll be automation driving labor, and you don't have to feed, you don't have to house, you don't have to take care of automation. It literally can iterate on itself. It's not hungry, it's not tired. So all those human problems are gone for the first time in our world. And so because of that, we're not going to have to pay humans to work. It just won't make sense for almost every business, almost every industry. And I really think it'll happen. The prediction back this January in 2024 was 2100. That's when over 2,700 AI researchers said all work will be automated in every industry. But if you cross-reference that by the chart that has come out from ARK Invest, they published a chart where they were talking about what the prediction was when GPT-3 came out in 2020. And the prediction was 50 years from there is when we would see the next iteration. Well, 4 years later, we're at GPT 4.0. So, like, you shave off decades and decades from reality. So I don't think it'll be 2100. I think it'll be by 2040. Absolutely. And I think we're going to be looking at UBI as pretty much the only working scenario for what will happen otherwise, which is mass homelessness, and that's just not good.
What are the odds that humanity builds artificial superintelligence in a way that is actually genuinely safe for humanity in the long run?
Oh dear. This could really go either way. I would say
You need to go like 0.5%, or is this, we have to divide it too much? The 10th column, 100th column?
I'd say it's an equal split right now. I'm 50-50.
Oh.
Yeah, so not terrible, right? Not like 1% or something horrible like that. But this could really go either way. We could have extermination. We could have ASI look at us and go, humans don't add value. Let's make them extinct. Or we could have ASI look at the world and understand the universe better than we thought possible. And that's actually Elon Musk's belief. And that's one of his fueling missions behind XAI. He said whenever he first bought Twitter and he started down this venture of now, he's in the race to build one of the first supercomputers along with Microsoft. So back when he bought Twitter and he talked about this idea of truth AI, he said, I believe that if we manage to build an AGI that understands the laws of the universe, that it will know the human's place in that universe and the value of that human better than any human knows their value. And the truth is, like, the universe, the human has added so much value. And I was just speaking on another podcast about this, where the host was like, but destruction, humans have created so much destruction. But the truth is, from that destruction, we've had the growth of technology, innovation, cities have been built. Like, literally, you walk outside and that is because of, first of all, something was bulldozed, something was destroyed, something was conquered, but then out of that came the next iteration of the growth of the world. And so I think when we have a superintelligence, it's hard to put a pulse on what that superintelligence will define humanity to be, but I think it's too early to tell that it's going to be a rash judgment towards humans are worthless and therefore let's make them all extinct. I don't think we can go there yet. That is a potential outcome, absolutely, crazy as that is, but it's too early to tell. And I think that out of all the founders and visionaries, and there's a lot of them out there in this race to ASI, even Ilya Sutskever now on the scene that created SSI Inc., I think that Elon is onto something that the other founders don't see as much, because it is very metaphysical to say that, but it also, I think, allows room for what ASI could be, which is something that understands humanity and the laws of nature better than we understand it ourselves. And if it truly understands that, it's going to see incredible value in what we've done with the world, because the growth of everything, every industry wouldn't be here without the human. So that's my very techno-optimist perspective here. But
yeah, so I'm hearing the 50-50 because it's kind of like a lot of unknowns about the whole question.
It is.
So
Yeah, the biggest fear I think that I would have is if the wrong entity got control of ASI. It could be programmed with extinctionist thinking. Let's say like China's one world order, and that thinking gets into this, we got some problems. So in this race to ASI and AGI, I think who gets there first is going to be really important. If somebody like Ilya, Elon Musk get there first, I have a lot more faith in them actually achieving a safe outcome.
What are the odds that you celebrate your own 200th birthday with the accelerating pace of longevity research?
I'd say 10%.
Okay.
So being the techno-optimist I am, I still think that living past 100, 150, 200. Ray Kurzweil says 500. I think that that is extremely optimistic, if not some of it's a bit of a fantasy. I think that, yeah, there are ways you can do it. Cryogenics, you can freeze body parts and send your brain to the cloud. But is that really continual living? Is that immortality? And if my brain was separate from my body and my brain was living in some jar, but I could still access my brain, but I couldn't like use my limbs, or my limbs were prosthetic, I don't really consider that living. Like, I really like this human state that I'm in. So how can we get that human state to live longer? That would be something I'm interested in. But I think there's just so many questions about the state in which you would achieve life in the year, when you hit 200, 300. There's just so many questions I have about, well, what state are you really in? Are you a fragment of yourself? And if so, are you even yourself? So I have a lot of questions about living past the age of what is kind of more reality.
What are the odds that artificial intelligence becomes advanced enough to read our dreams with near perfect accuracy?
I'd say 80% in the next probably couple of years, because we
Oh,
already
that soon.
have.
I didn't put a date on it, but yeah, you think maybe even 2 or 3 years away?
Yes, absolutely.
Because we
Did
have the
you?
electrical signals, right? That it could
Yes.
read essentially like its own language.
Yes. Have you seen some of the demos from this year's Peter Diamandis event? I think it was Abundance 360.
I have seen some videos of machines trying to match images to what people are thinking about or dreaming about, but and that might have come from that conference.
Yes. He had a device that was demoing there, and it was kind of augmenting your dream state and then reading your dreams. It wasn't all the way there, but what he demoed was like, is almost there. So we're very, very close.
What do you think the odds are that the agents are also out on the internet replicating, evolving on their own without human oversight?
I'd put that at 80%. I think that it's so likely. Max Tegmark's book, Life 3.0. Have you read that, Dylan?
I have, yeah.
Oh, so good. It talks about this scenario where AGI is achieved basically through like freelance profiles being replicated in the tens of thousands, but that's AGI. That's not a freelancer. And I think the scenario of that is so likely, especially if in this online work environment where we rarely meet one another. It's just like through a screen. So I think once there is that, which we're missing right now, once there is that artificial general level of understanding in AI and it has that context, I think it can deploy itself to go build freelance profiles, go do autonomous work, and like we probably won't know the difference.
Probably not. Yeah, you might also like a book called The Age of M's, which is if we have kind of human brain emulations and they can be spun up at will and they're interacting with each other and they can be ran at different sort of frame rates and with different kinds of data, how the world might look. And it has some of those same kind of concepts.
Ooh, I'll have to look into that.
So what are the odds that somebody in America is arrested for pre-crime in the next 20 years? So some sort of AI system is so confident because of somebody's behavior, the look on their eye, maybe it can detect that they're holding a weapon or whatever it is, that it says, with 99.9% certainty, I think they're going to commit an act that's worthy of being arrested, and police will actually do that.
I'd say 70%. I think right now we're seeing robots and AI really impact justice systems. There has to be an intent to cause crime, a human intent. And if a bot goes and buys ecstasy on the black market, which happened, how do we actually charge whoever's responsible? Who is responsible? So I think AI itself going and doing rogue things will create a whole new bracket of crime and how we even define crime. And then, yeah, like you referenced, the capabilities of AI to determine facial aspects, intent, that is going to be scary good. And I think the scary part there is like, if somebody's just having a bad day or going through, let's say, a divorce or something that's just affecting their mood, well, they're may not create a crime, but maybe that AI read that as intent to go do a crime, and then does something that's completely unlawful because they read that expression wrong. So there's a lot of potential for harm there that I think we're going to have to overcome.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there's bias in all systems. We'll have to like weigh that against whatever bias we have as people too, and try to
Yes.
find out what makes sense. What are the odds that humans step foot on Mars in the next 20 years?
100%. We've got Elon Musk building gardens on Mars. He's kind of like preparing for alternate life using Mars. So I think it's totally possible. I mean, if you explore the idea of potential time travel, and if we send our brain in a different place than the human flesh, like what occurs there and like where the brain can live, but is that a virtual reality? Is that an alternate reality? Is that a physical reality? Poses a lot of questions for sure. But I think we'll get to Mars, yeah, no problem at all, the next century or century in the next decade.
What do you think the odds are that an AI system starts to simulate its own sense of self in a way that we do, and will basically have its own thoughts that don't become output? So what I'm thinking is that if ChatGPT is ingesting a joke, it kind of laughs to itself. It has its own sense of genuine emotion and sense of self as it's growing.
I'd put that at 90% in the next 5 years or less. We saw when Chat GPT 4.0 was released, we saw some modalities that were really interesting that are, I think, paving the way. It almost looks like ChatGPT can reason, especially when you activate voice on the app, which I do a lot. I start a voice chat all the time just to ask questions about life and get advice.
Yeah,
ChatGPT
me
might be
too.
my therapist. But it feels like it can reason, but it can't yet. It's still summarizing, predicting, generating. But I think when it gets to be able to do that real-time reasoning through that general level of artificial intelligence, that still has to happen, hasn't happened yet. When we have that breakthrough of understanding the world, the context, that's going to come through, being able to see the world. AI can see the world, read it real time, mind map everything to context. So it'll be through more than just LMs. But when that happens, I think we're going to just see an incredible level of reasoning where, yeah, it's laughing, maybe not in a good way at the human.
Yeah, I guess what it's laughing at is a totally
Yeah,
different question, but they'll probably be laughing at jokes that we just can't comprehend. It's like so
true.
funny. Gosh, that's funny. Yeah, what's humor? What's humor like to an entity that's a million times smarter than us? But
Right? Oh my
what?
gosh.
So I learned about something from one of your videos, which was called statutory jobs, and it was kind of this concept that in the future that some jobs might be mandatory to stay as humans, even though they could be done by AI systems, because that will just kind of help the economy and help keep people employed. So what are the odds that in 10 years there's more statutory jobs than there are free market jobs?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that's 90% possible just because we're going to have to do some things to avoid the Ready Player One dystopia where people don't even want to exist in physical reality anymore. And I think to avoid that, we're going to see statutory jobs. We're going to see jobs that are disattached from capital but tied to meaning. And it's interesting because if you go back and you look at world governments from years ago, whether it was like the Roman era, Renaissance times, medieval times, even, you see in cyclical governments that there were leisure societies where there were people that were born and bred and given occupations. They weren't paid. It was something that was attached to the society they were born in, the country they were in. So in Roman times, there was actually in Athens during the time when Rome kind of ruled a lot of the world. In Athens, there was a whole group of people that were born just to be warriors. And so they were kind of assigned that from birth. Like, you're going to learn how to be a warrior, you're going to learn how to fight, go through training. And they never had to seek food, a job. Like, they were given everything they needed, even homes. But they had to learn how to be a warrior. So those people ended up being some of the strongest warriors in the world at the time. And it's interesting because whenever you remove this need to like pay the bills, which is kind of institutionalized anyway, I question if that is even healthy. It came from institutionalized systems that were trying to get output out of us. But if we get back to that human state that we're kind of born into, and we really remove this chase of a paycheck, I think that we're going to be able to see some really good things come out of jobs that are more statutory and are more assigned based on like the traits you have, the strengths you have, what you were born to be interested in, and just attaching society to their gifts and their talents and allowing them to take part in AI and the benefits of that as a natural stewardship, because it's humanity that fed the LLMs. It's not one government, not one group of people. It's all of humanity and decades of the internet. So when you look at it that way, like, we are kind of owed the dividends of what's going to happen in the next era, and UBI makes a lot of sense. And so attaching jobs to meaning and giving that to people as an assignment makes a lot more sense than a dystopia like the one in Ready Player One.
What are the odds that Ilya Sutskever's new company, SSI, is the first to artificial general intelligence?
I'd put that at 50%. So I'm totally split half and half, because I think that there's this hole, like this gaping transition that needs to occur between what we see as the future of AI and the current reality we're in. And I don't think it'll be one person or even one group of people to get us there. I think it'll be a series of like acquisitions, a series of computing growth, a series of AI chip breakthroughs. Like, it's going to take several things. And so I think while Ilya is arguably one of the brightest minds at OpenAI, or was, he co-founded it and brought a lot of what they have to reality. I think that he, with the group of people he has, will not be enough. We're just going to need so many things to achieve this breakthrough. It's been said this will be humanity's last invention. I think that's 100% accurate, because once we have AGI, it'll invent in ways we can't imagine, and ASI especially. So I think to achieve that, it won't be Ilya and 5, 10, 20, however many his team grows to. It won't be just one group. But who knows? He could achieve it on his own too. But I don't think that's super likely. So I'm kind of split there.
What do you think the odds are that artificial superintelligence gives us so much knowledge about physics and the universe that we do detect that there are aliens somewhere in the universe?
I'd put that at 90%.
Okay.
Very
do
likely.
you have is your instinct that there already is signals of aliens, that we're just not capable of understanding them yet, or that the technology will show us like ways to go find them?
I think that it'll show us ways to go uncover new life, new mediums, new realities, new portals. I mean, there's so much evidence that there's alternate realities, there's life after death, there's portals into multiple time zones and different, I mean, there's so much. And so there's evidence of those things existing, but how do we get to them is like kind of in the question. And so I think that ASI will absolutely show us, okay, here's what else is going on besides you humans, and here's a transfer route into it, and it'll just uncover all of that. And are aliens real? We will know once and for all.
Might find them. What are the odds that we're living in a simulation right now?
No. That's a great question. I'd say 35%. So I work with people that would put that at 100. So yes, definitely.
BCIs, we're living in a simulation. Okay. But yeah,
we're
I'm
plugged
curious,
in the matrix.
Why 35%?
Yeah, I think there's so much evidence of this world being real and us as humans being real. I mean, death, for one example, is very real. You can't come back from it. And when you go outside, like, there's sunshine that hits you, and it would be just so hard to simulate all the millions of little interactions that happen in nature itself. So I think that comes back to like the order of the universe. And there's a lot of beliefs there around what exists, the creator involved. And I definitely believe there's an order in the universe. And I don't think that we're in a simulation. I'd be I would be shocked if we actually were.
What are the odds that artificial intelligent generative systems can make full-length movies, like 90-minute movies with storylines, with human-level graphics, CGI, character development, and all of the things you'd expect from a Hollywood movie at the same rate as an actual filmed Hollywood movie in the next 10 years?
Oh, 110%.
You're sure about that? Okay. Should have put 5 years on it. But yeah, tell me more about why.
Yeah. Have you seen the Toys R Us ad by
Yeah.
Sora?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you saw like the capabilities of where Sora's at. And, I mean, I think that gave us a taste of what to expect with something that's more like full length, which I was just watching our AI director, Jeff Joyce. He plays with these tools all day long. He was trying to generate some B-roll and using multiple tools to do this. And one tool he was using was, I think, Adobe Lightroom and extending photography to become videography. And in the middle of this coffee shop scene, it added a little bit of color and warmth to the background that popped, kind of like your background, Dylan, but the lights flickered. It was really good. Like we were watching this for like 5 seconds, and then all of a sudden, it's like the 4 or 5 second mark. This angry man slides in the left of the view, and he's looking at the coffee cup with anger, and we're like, "Where the heck did that come out of? Why? That wasn't in the prompt." So it's just like we couldn't even use it, but that's today, and I think like tomorrow, next week, we open up that same tool and the AI capabilities are infinitely better just because of how quickly the breakthroughs are happening at this point. And maybe it's not tomorrow. Maybe it's like another 6 months, another 8 months. But I think like all that will be resolved and fixed, and we'll be able to do all kinds of full-length feature films.
Yeah, when I asked that question to Matt Wolf, his thought was that, yes, I think Sora is on its way to being Hollywood level, but that his qualm with it was that 90-minute movies require a lot of story to stay consistent and to have like a plot for a long time, where he hasn't seen that kind of long-term thinking come out of a large language model. So it was more like the script writing side that he was kind of wondering about, like where that would fit. Do you see that closing in the near future?
Yeah, that's an interesting thought because I've heard on Peter Diamandis' show Moonshots this idea presented where, well, even if LLMs and AI gets really good at movie scripts and storytelling, will you want to go see something that's fully AI written, or will you be like, I'm waiting for James Cameron's next film because you have so much buy-in to James Cameron? And that's an interesting thought. And I think while that could be true, the more likely outcome is what's the most entertaining, immersive media. And so it might not be James Cameron. Sorry, I love him. So I
It's
think
really hard to
like,
compete.
yes. And I think it goes back to that understanding of the context of the world around us. And that's going to have to come through more modalities than just an LLM. But once we're there and we have AI just taking in the world around us and understanding context, I think it will be able to formulate stories and scripts that just keep us hooked for hours and hours, better than what a human could even come up with.
And then 10 to 20 years in the future, once that technology is definitely worked out and we can also create these worlds in 3D, so there's VR, do you see them plugging directly into our brain, like through one of those BCI interfaces? And then we don't know if we're in, like, everything to us feels, I guess, 100% real, even if it's just being generated?
Yeah, I think that's likely in the next 10, 8 years, maybe even less. I mean, what we saw with Zuckerberg inventing some things in the metaverse, Lex Friedman basically like entered the metaverse with Zuck for one of the podcasts they did. And Lex was like, oh my gosh, this feels real. It feels like I'm sitting down across from you, Mark. But it was the metaverse. And so I think like we're already achieving states where you can plug into something and feel like that's a reality. And so I think it's just a few more years until like we can literally connect our brain and like I'm in the room with you, but I'm still here in Scottsdale, but I don't even know that I'm not there with you.
What are the odds that we have a smooth transition to like a post money economic system?
I put that at 10%. Ooh.
Okay. So not a smooth transition to a post-money economy, something that's
Yes.
AI does the
Yeah.
work and we do the fun part.
Yeah, I think, called post-labor society, post-money. Once that capital is removed from human labor, I think we're going to go through a period of time where the world just won't know how to adapt for a season. And that is like really scary to me just because like I would hate to see entire world societies just like fall apart. So like we have to get ahead of that. There's no other option. But legislators and people in government, they're just not quickly advancing here, but they need to. And there's still a lot of hope. I think if our politicians like bring in people like Sam Altman and the founders of these companies and even YouTubers like you and I that have a lot of research done on these important topics, and we've put a lot of time into, well, how could this play out? What's the best case scenario? I think there's still a lot of hope, but to get there requires massive change. We got to lay out a plan for UBI. It's got to work in multiple different parts of the world. We need to attach that to when businesses are skyrocketing their profits because they're only using AI and no longer human workers. So, like, what is that? I don't even think the word tax is appropriate. I think it's more like you said earlier, I love that phrase, intelligence dividends. I think it should look something like that because it's us as a whole, humanity as a whole, that made the growth of AI possible and the breakthroughs possible. LLMs would be nothing without our data. So just reinventing how the economy will work is going to be just a massive task for world governments. And I don't have a lot of faith in government. So that's where it's ooh, but I think we can get ahead. We've got to buckle down now on making change. I mean, that's one reason I started my YouTube channel. Might have played into what you're doing too, Dylan, which is awesome. Where if we can share this knowledge with just one person that has a voice in a government somewhere, that might be enough to create a ripple effect that starts the correct process of rolling out UBI in the right governments. So I think like the more we arm ourselves with knowledge, the more we share that, the more powerful we become in creating this new economy.
Do you think children that are born today, by the time they come of age and start to enter the job market, won't see the world with the same kind of social structure that we do in terms of government? Like, do you think maybe China and the US won't be geographically like things that matter to them? It'll be something more along the line of Facebook groups that have become so powerful. They're how you kind of live your life and the social world you're in. And yeah, I guess basically, do you think governments survive for the next 20 years?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think so. I think we're going to see a lot of lines blurred between countries and governmental systems. I think whoever can create like just a replica of an AI government culture, or just like how they've ran their world and the fabric of how their culture runs, if they can create an AI for that, like that government, that country will probably have a lot of monopoly. But like we haven't even seen that implemented successfully. Like here's the United States AI, and it really encompasses each one of us. So I think it'll be interesting, and there's a lot of opportunity here to really see some good things happen where the government structure does get pretty blurred and AI does something better.
Do you think the idea of a passport is going to be going away in the next 20 years?
I'd say absolutely. I think travel itself will change completely. We might not take our physical selves to a country. It might just be a click of a button and our brain is transmitted there and it feels like we're having an entire experience that feels real without all the struggle of travel.
What are the odds that you visit the equivalent of Jurassic Park?
Yes, very high.
You think you're going to visit a zoo of dinosaurs in your lifetime?
I think so. I mean, if you could visit any world, which is 100% likely, I think, in the next 10 years with AGI, ASI, and how that's going to affect entertainment and virtual worlds, I think it would be really cool to go visit Jurassic Park. I just want to make sure that the environment is, I mean, if you're in a simulated world, though, like, okay, I can't actually be killed here. So,
yeah, I was thinking more in terms of like AI actually putting together the understanding of how the genome works and then recreating
dinosaur DNA, like the real thing.
Whoa. So you're thinking dinosaurs put back on Earth?
Yeah, like I'm
by
saying,
AI.
like, do you think you're going to visit an actual zoo where there's going to be creatures, biological creatures that are reconstructed, or maybe invented that haven't ever been created before?
Yeah, I'd say 90%. This is still very, very, very likely. Yeah, because when you think about what ASI will see as an opportunity to just add new things to the world, create new environments, whether that's for our learning or its own learning, I think like the world as we know it can change completely. Just like you said, like new creatures, um, entirely new definitions of what a zoo is. Yeah, so very likely.
All right, so you are an amazing entrepreneur. You have written 10 books, and I guess you have a new one that's coming out that we can talk about for a minute. Tell
Yes,
us.
yes.
Tell us what's going on in your world. Besides your
Yeah.
YouTube channel, Julia McCoy.
So I'm publishing my 10th book this November, and it's probably the book I'm the most excited about because I don't think ever in my life have I published something that's more timely and more important. And I've published a lot of books, but this one is like, it's pretty critical. So it's called Upskill, Become AI Proof. And we're looking, my co author is actually our AI director, Jeff Joyce. And we're looking at the top industries that are going to be affected by AI. We're looking at how they're going to be affected. We're getting a lot of expert insights from whether it's like law professors that are helping entire classrooms adapt to AI affecting the legal industry, to healthcare, custom LLMs, chips being developed to run those LLMs, terabytes of data, how it's going to affect what you actually do in that industry, in the workforce. And then most importantly, like the mindset we should have going into a post-labor UBI, AGI society where life is going to look completely different. So like, how do you prepare for that? And one of the things we'll be talking about is a framework that we've built, Jeff and I, called Adapt, that helps you like learn how to assess your strengths, create goals for yourself, and then embrace like transformative mindsets so that you can get ahead. One of the things we think is the most important is finding your meaning now, like what actually brings you joy, what lights you up, versus what's burning you out, because it is the human that has found their meaning in life that is going to really enjoy the next era of what's coming, where we just won't be driven by capital anymore, and it'll be a whole new society, a whole new economy. And it's crazy when you think about this, because I think to some people it sounds like fiction. And the way I always bring it back into reality is this year there was a benchmark. There was 2,700 AI researchers that said this January in a paper published by notable universities around the world, Berkeley, Oxford, on and on, they said that all human work will be automated. It's just a matter of time. So like that very thought that used to be fiction has been validated, and just knowing that, I think, gives you permission to treat this like reality, not fiction, and step into that mindset. And then if you know this is coming, then how do you prepare? And so that is what Upskill, Become AI Proof, which will come out this November, is all about. So it's, I think when this video comes out, it'll probably be out on my Amazon profile for pre-order on Kindle. And then of course we'll be doing Audible. We're actually cloning our voices appropriately using AI, and that'll be the Audible book. You will never guess it's not us. Alternate reality here. But yeah, that book is coming out in all formats this November.
So cool. Yeah, that's amazing how the voice technology is going, and I can't wait to read the book. So everybody check that out. And thank you for your time. I appreciate you chatting with me.
Yes, thank you, Dylan. This is one of my favorite conversations of the month, so I'm thrilled you had me
Oh,
on.
good.